was cut tragically short before I even reached my second birthday. I'm Alissa Beth Guernsey. I was born on November 2, 2007, in Indiana. After my father died in a car accident, my mother, Cary Sprunger, was overcome with grief and unable to care for me and my two siblings. That's when she made the decision to place us in the care of her cousin, Christy Shaffer, until she could get back on her feet. Little did we know that this arrangement would lead to unspeakable horrors. As my mother fell deeper into a life of drugs, Christy was granted custody of us, and she limited my mother's access to the older children. I believe now that she did this to conceal the heinous abuse she inflicted upon me. Even the doctors and specialists I was taken to didn't recognize the signs of abuse, despite the mysterious hair loss and unexplained bruises that covered my tiny body. But the abuse didn't stop there. On March 28, 2009, during a car ride with Christy and my siblings, she unleashed her anger and frustration on me, mercilessly beating and banging my head against the car seat. I lost consciousness, falling into a coma. The horrifying truth is that Christy didn't rush to get me help. Instead, she carried on with her errands, leaving me in that car seat, fighting for my life, for hours. Eventually, her brother, who happened to be an EMT, arrived and discovered the chilling truth. I was cold to the touch, and my heart had stopped beating. He immediately called 911, and
Alissa Guernsey was born into love. Her mother, Jessica Guernsey, adored her, treasuring every giggle, every tiny milestone. She was a happy baby, full of life, bright-eyed, with a future that should have been filled with bedtime stories and birthday cakes. But fate had other plans. Jessica's world fell apart when a minor legal issue led to her temporary incarceration. In an instant, Alissa and her siblings needed care. The system, meant to protect the vulnerable, made a decision that would seal Alissa's fate. Alissa was placed in the custody of Christina McCune, a woman who was supposed to be family, someone trusted to give her the safety and love that Jessica no longer could. But behind closed doors, that safety was a lie. At first, the changes were subtle. Alissa became quieter, her once bright energy dimmed. Then came the bruises. "She's just clumsy," McCune would say. "Toddlers fall." But Alissa wasn't just falling. She was being beaten. Repeatedly, the bruises were deep, dark, in places that no accident could explain. Over time, her soft curls thinned from stress, patches of her hair ripped from her scalp. Her tiny body, once warm and full of life, became frail, exhausted from constant pain. The people around her saw the signs, doctors, neighbors, even family, but no one intervened. The system that should have saved her ignored the cries that never came. Because by then, Alissa had learned, crying only made it worse. Then came March 28, 2009. Alissa's body could take no more. The final beating was worse than the others, violent, unrelenting. It broke her from the inside out. She collapsed, unresponsive. Christina McCune did nothing. For hours, Alissa lay in agony, her tiny body failing, her life slipping away. By the time 911 was called, it was too late. The autopsy told the story that Alissa never could. Multiple blunt force injuries, head trauma, evidence of sustained, prolonged abuse, the marks of a child who had been tortured. LaGrange, Indiana, woke up to the horror. But what happened next was even more shocking. Christina McCune was not charged with murder. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the state only charged her with neglect of a dependent resulting in death. Her sentence? Just 10 years. 10 years for the life of a 16-month-old child. And the final insult? She didn't even serve the full sentence. The outrage was immediate. The community demanded justice. How could a woman who beat a baby to death walk free so soon? How could the system let this happen? But Alissa's story was not just a tragedy. It became a call for change. Her name became a rallying cry against child abuse, a symbol of the innocent lives lost in a system that too often fails to act before it's too late. And so, we ask you, who speaks for the children who can't cry for help? If Alissa's story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it. Speak out. Because silence is what killed her. And silence is what allows this to happen to other children. Alissa Guernsey deserved better. ES crept in slowly, controlling her decisions, questioning her every move. Then came the jealousy, the rage whenever she tried to distance herself. The relationship became toxic, suffocating. Janelle knew she had to get out. And she did. Or at least, she thought she did. Breakups are supposed to be an ending, a way to move forward. But for some men, no is never an option. The calls kept coming. The threats turned from words into something real. The stalking, the warnings. Friends told Janelle to be careful, but what could she do? She had a child to protect, a life to live. Kylie, just 9 years old, sensed the fear in her mother. She wasn't like other kids. She didn't get to live in a world where nightmares stayed in the dark. She heard the hushed conversations, saw the tension in her mother's eyes. She started sleeping with the light on. She asked, "Mommy, is he coming back?" Then, on the night of March 17th, 2023, the fear became reality. The sound of a door forced open, raised voices, a gunshot, then another, and another. The neighbors woke up to the screams, a frantic 911 call. When police arrived, they found Janelle barely alive, bleeding, gasping for help. But Kylie was gone. The little girl who loved unicorns and bedtime stories, who should have been worrying about school and cartoons, lay lifeless, executed in cold blood. The man who claimed to love Janelle had turned his gun on the thing she loved most. Houston woke up to horror. The community was shaken. The search began. Where was he? How does a man shoot a child and just disappear into the night? The manhunt gripped the city, but the real question haunted everyone. Why wasn't he stopped before it was too late? Days later, he was found, arrested, cuffed. But as the case moved to court, another question loomed. Would justice be served? Janelle, shattered but surviving, faced the man who destroyed her world. The evidence was overwhelming, the crime undeniable. The jury gave their verdict, guilty. But was it enough? Could any sentence bring back what was lost? Kylie's name cannot be forgotten. Not just a victim, not just a statistic. She was a little girl who deserved better. If this story made you feel something, anger, sorrow, the need for change, don't let it end here. Share it. Speak about it. Because silence is what allows monsters like this to believe they can get away with it. And Kylie's story deserves to be heard. Alissa Guernsey was born into a world of love. From the moment she took her first breath, her mother, Jessica Guernsey, cherished her with all her heart. A beautiful baby girl with bright blue eyes, soft curls, and a contagious giggle. Alissa brought light into the lives of those around her. She was the youngest in the family, doted on by her siblings, a child who should have had a future filled with warmth and happiness. But life has a cruel way of changing in an instant. Jessica, struggling with personal issues, found herself arrested on a minor charge. A mistake, one that she never imagined would cost her the life of her daughter. The legal system forced a decision. Her children had to be placed in someone else's care while she served her time. That should have been a temporary situation, a short-term disruption before she could reunite with her babies. Family was supposed to step in. Blood was supposed to protect blood. That's when Christina McCoon entered the picture. McCoon was no stranger. She was considered family, someone who should have loved and protected Alissa like her own. The system trusted her. Jessica trusted her. But behind closed doors, McCoona wasn't a guardian. She was a monster. At first, everything seemed normal. People believed Alissa was safe. But then, the subtle changes started. Changes that went unnoticed until it was too late. The once happy baby became quiet. Her bubbly personality began to fade. She no longer smiled as often. And then came the bruises. Small at first, dismissed as normal toddler accidents. But they didn't stop. They multiplied. They darkened. People around Alissa saw the signs. Family, doctors, neighbors. But no one stepped in. They had no idea that inside that home, Alissa was suffering unimaginable cruelty. At first, the bruises seemed minor. Just small marks on Alissa's delicate skin. Babies fall all the time, don't they? That's what people told themselves. She must have bumped into something. Maybe she tripped while learning to walk. She's just a baby. Babies bruise easily. But babies don't bruise like this, and babies don't stop smiling for no reason. The bruises didn't fade, they multiplied. Each week, new ones appeared. Dark, angry splotches on her tiny body. Some on her arms, some on her legs, some in places that no toddler could ever get from simply falling. Alissa's once bright personality began to change. The baby who once giggled at everything, who reached for the people she loved, stopped seeking comfort. She became silent, withdrawn, afraid. She learned that crying only made things worse. Then came the hair loss. Not natural, ripped from her scalp. Clumps of her soft curls were missing, pulled out. A child too young to understand why this was happening to her, but old enough to feel the pain. People around Alissa noticed. Doctors saw the marks. Family saw the changes. But no one did anything. Maybe they didn't want to believe it. Maybe they convinced themselves that Macoon's excuses were true. But denial doesn't protect children. Alissa was suffering, alone, in silence, in the place that was supposed to keep her safe. Alissa Guernsey's final days were filled with unimaginable suffering. The once lively, smiling baby girl was now a shell of herself, her body weak, her spirit broken. The bruises had become a part of her, as constant as her pain. Some were fading, others fresh, layer upon layer of violence, telling a story that Alissa couldn't. She was barely able to move, a 16-month-old child, so young, so small, yet carrying the weight of countless beatings. She no longer had the strength to play, to laugh, to even cry. And then came the final beating. March 28, 2009. Alissa's frail body could take no more. The last assault was worse than the others. Violent, relentless, merciless. It broke her from the inside out. She collapsed, unresponsive, dying. And Christina Macoon did nothing. She didn't panic. She didn't rush to call 911. She let Alissa lay there, suffering, dying in agony, alone. For hours, her tiny body shut down, the life fading from her little blue eyes. By the time Macoon finally called for help, it was too late. Paramedics arrived to a nightmare. Alissa was gone. But her body told the truth. A truth so horrific, it shocked even those used to seeing death. Because this wasn't just an accident. It wasn't neglect. This was murder. The autopsy left no room for doubt. When the medical examiner examined Alissa Guernsey's small, lifeless body, the horrifying truth was exposed in brutal detail. Multiple blunt force head injuries, bruises in various stages of healing, hair missing from her scalp, signs of repeated systematic abuse. This was not an accident. This was torture. The town of LaGrange, Indiana, woke up to the horror. A peaceful community, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, now faced a reality too dark to comprehend. A baby had been beaten to death in their midst. And worse, it had gone unnoticed. The outrage was immediate. How did no one stop this? Why didn't someone protect her? And the biggest question of all, would justice be served? The trial should have been simple. The evidence was overwhelming. The injuries told a story that Alissa never got the chance to speak. The prosecution had everything they needed to put Christina Macoon away for life. But justice never came. Macoon was not charged with murder. Instead, she faced a lesser charge, neglect of a dependent resulting in death. And her sentence? 10 years. Just 10 years for stealing the life of a 16-month-old child. The community was outraged. This wasn't neglect. This was brutal, unrelenting abuse. How could someone who tortured a baby to death walk free in a matter of years? But the system had spoken, and justice for Alissa Guernsey had been denied. The news of Christina Macoon's light sentence sent shockwaves through the community. People were outraged. They had trusted the system to protect the innocent, to stand up for those who couldn't defend themselves. But Alissa had failed at every turn. Why didn't anyone step in? Why was nothing done sooner? Why was this not treated as murder? Alissa's bruises had been visible. Doctors saw them, family members saw them. But time and time again, people chose to look the other way. Was it fear? Was it denial? Or was it simply negligence? And then, the greatest insult of all. Macoon, the woman who had beaten a baby to death, received only 10 years, not life, not decades behind bars. Just 10 years for a lifetime stolen. The public demanded answers. Letters were written, petitions signed. People called for reform, for tougher sentences, for real consequences for child abusers. But the heartbreaking reality was clear. Monsters walk free, and justice is not always served. For Alissa, it was too late. But for thousands of other children suffering in silence, her story became a warning, a call to action. Because the next time a baby's bruises are ignored, the next time the system looks the other way, will another child suffer the same fate? Alissa Guernsey's story is more than a tragedy. It's a wake-up call. Her death exposed the failures of child protective services, the complacency of those who should have stepped in, and the broken system that let her abuser walk free after only a decade. But her name cannot be forgotten. She was not just a victim, she was a baby girl who deserved love, safety, and a future. This isn't just about Alissa, it's about every child suffering in silence. It's about every warning sign ignored, every bruise left unexplained, every cry that goes unheard. Speak out. If something feels wrong, report it. If you see a child in distress, don't look away. Share her story. Let Alissa's name be a reminder that we must do better, that we must protect the innocent, support child protection organizations. There are countless children out there, just like Alissa, who need someone to fight for them. Be that person. Because silence is what killed Alissa, and silence is what allows this to happen to other children. Alissa Guernsey deserved better, and so do the children still waiting to be saved.